A chapter out of Artfeld and Swart. Once upon a time, the very first time I taught this class, I used Arnfeld as my textbook, but I had a run-in with the textbook manufacturer, and they told me not to use their textbook anymore. And I primarily don't. I certainly don't buy it from them, but I still use two of the chapters out of that textbook, and they can probably come and sue myself if they wanted to. I think they'll probably just. It's going to be hard for them to rationalize how they could tell somebody not to use their textbook. So I'm not really that worried about it. So what we're going to talk about today is dependency, despondency, and depression. This has to do with social media and gaming. Oh, one of the things you have to remember is you have a paper that's due the 1st of April. It has to do with anything that we've talked about in class. Since there are no textbooks, you can't look at the textbook and go, "Oh, I find this really fascinating." You'll have to look at the old PowerPoints or the PowerPoints that we've done, or maybe in the future, maybe something that you're anticipating, maybe something that I've missed. That's a possibility. I'm not. Some people think I'm a technophobe, but the reality is I'm not a technophobe, not really. I know how to do some things, but I don't stay on my phone 24 hours a day, and I don't watch YouTube videos ad nauseum at night. Sometimes I watch YouTube videos. I'm not on TikTok. I'm not on Instagram. And if you've ever tried to text me, I probably didn't get the message because my phone is about 30 feet that way. I don't really need it that close to me. So I'm not really a technophobe. I'm just wary of all of these things. I don't game because, well, even when my kids were young, there were the game was Pong, and then they had what did they have? They had some kind of a Star Wars game that you couldn't possibly win. It was really kind of interesting. Anyway, yeah, Nintendo. It was Nintendo. That's what it was. Okay. My grandson is though. He's either on his phone or playing Fortnite just about every minute. If you don't catch him and throw him outside, then that's what happens. Anyway, okay, so let's go ahead and get started and talk about some of the problems with social media and gaming. Not only does the internet, and in particular its proliferating social media platforms, provide a virtual social and entertainment haven, even a place for posturing and braggadocio, for those who are prone to awkwardness, seclusion, and other interpersonal dysfunctionality in offline environments, but it is also the ideal battlefield for fearmongers, hate mongers, propagandists, and unscrupulous corporations, as well as advocacy groups who want to promote their agendas with no moderation regarding truth or moral responsibility. There is no control over the internet. You can see anything and everything. And it doesn't have to be true, or it doesn't have to be true. And has been a problem because we have these conspiracy theories about the government popping up. We don't know where they came from. Well, we have an idea where they came from, but we have all of this stuff that's popping up on the internet, and some people believe it as if it's the gospel truth. As weird as that is. The 2016 US presidential election, the Russian troll farm was allegedly behind this influence campaign and at the center of the ensuing FBI and House Intelligence Committee investigations, of course, did not invent fake news. However, the flagrancy with which they were alleged to have acted held a mirror up to several hundred millions social media users to reveal something no one wanted to admit. People were addicted to the internet, and we found this. This is what a Russian troll farm looks like. and these guys are planning all kinds of strange messages. I was on Facebook at that time during the 2016 election, and I got just tons of propaganda. And I think part of it was coming out of Russia, because uh, I would communicate with the people that theoretically sent it to me, they would say, "No, I didn't send you anything." And so I'm thinking that I was being trolled by the Russian troll farms. Why they would pick on me, I have no idea. Many people describe themselves as being continuously connected without interruption to social media or some application of the internet on a daily and even an hourly basis. This still comparatively new reality of daily occupational and social functioning underscores just how significantly the definition of acceptable behavior versus repetitive or compulsive behavior that interferes with that same social and occupational functioning and thus classifies the behavior as disordered has changed in only a matter of years. So it wasn't 15, 20 years ago that none of this could happen, mainly because you couldn't do that with your telephone, with your iPhone or whatever you've got. So as you can see, this person is either on their phone, their tablet, or their computer, or sleeping, and that's all that they're doing. The DSM-5 proposes 9 diagnostic criteria for internet gaming linked to persistent and recurrent solo or multiplayer gaming on the internet that causes significant impairment or distress in one or more areas of a person's life. To qualify for clinical diagnosis, 5 or more of the following elements must be present in the most recent 12-month period. The individual has become preoccupied with internet games, which overshadows all other activities and responsibilities in everyday life. When access to the internet is prohibited or restricted, the individual becomes irritable, anxious, or sad, which represents withdrawal symptoms. The baseline tolerance is progressively raised, meaning that the person increasingly feels the urge to spend more time online. The person is not able to control his or her gaming behavior, often having had multiple unsuccessful attempts or resolutions to curb playing internet games. Number 5, the person has lost interest in activities, hobbies that were previously enjoyable at the expense of internet games. Number 6, the individual is aware of psychosocial issues or distress as a result of his or her internet gaming, but persists with the behavior. Number 7, the person lies or deceives friends, family, therapists, or others, or hides from them the extent of their internet gaming participation. 8, internet games are used as an escape mechanism or relief from psychological distress, such as depression, guilt, anxiety, or self-loathing. 9, as a result of his or her gaming, the individual has lost or compromised valuable life opportunities such as a job, career advancement, education, or interpersonal relationships. According to the DSM, internet gaming addiction is most prevalent among 12 to 20-year-old male adolescents from Asian countries, in particular China and South Korea. Prevalence of internet addiction among adolescents in these countries was 8.4% for males and 4.5% for females. One German study suggested that 1.5 to 3.5% of adolescent computer and internet users show signs of an overuse or addictive use of computer and video games. Addiction is generally defined as any dependence that results in signs of withdrawal once a dependency is removed without proper and controlled weaning. Like any addiction, dependence on the internet is similar to other compulsive behaviors that can have both physical and psychological triggers. Now, let me tell you this. Okay, we're in the middle of this talking about addiction. Yeah. Bradway's full of bananas. Okay, that's a possibility. Maybe you're on the internet a lot, and your phone is never more than looking at hands breadth away from you, okay? Maybe you think I'm full of manure. That's what's in this can right here. Oops, I don't have it. Yeah, there I have it. Okay, that's what's in the can. Anyway, okay, so if you think that's true, then what you need to do is you need to write a paper supporting all this internet use. Now, there's always a possibility that we're attacking something that we shouldn't be attacking. There's always that possibility. They attacked rock and roll. They attacked television when it first came out. It was the boob tube. Rock and roll was going to destroy the morality of all humans. They even did the same thing with opera. They did the same thing with the waltz. Two people dancing together and standing so close to each other. Well, that was going to lead to a lot of pregnancies, they thought. And of course, now we don't complain about the opera. We certainly don't complain about the waltz. Uh, Rock and roll didn't destroy, well, maybe it destroyed some people, but not very many. So it's possible that Bradway's full well, this stuff that's in this can. Okay? And you can write a paper about that. If you think that the internet, Facebook is the most wonderful thing in the world, if you can find enough studies that support it, then I think you need to. It's the same way, Bradway attacks marijuana. Yes, I do. I think marijuana I consider marijuana a drug, and I don't think that it is innocent. I see it as a real problem. So if you think that, if you can find the studies that support your idea, I think you need to write a paper like that, okay? That's what you need to do, because you need to convince me that I'm wrong. And I will admit that I'm wrong if you have enough support for it. If you have enough support that is good research to support marijuana as innocent and not addictive, then let's see it. Let's see the good stuff. If we need to change, we need to change. And it's the same way about the internet. If you're on the internet constantly and it hasn't bothered you at all, and whoops, why is that? And none of these 9 things are true about you, then find the research that says that it is non-destructive. But we do know that this is a problem in China and South Korea. We know that it's less of a problem in Germany, but that's fine. Let's get the truth out there. Once upon a time, there were people that said that tobacco there was nothing wrong with tobacco. Once upon a time, there were people that said that the races need to be separated, segregated, kept away from each other, and they could defend that with certain research. And if you can find that same research to support your ideas about the internet and to support your ideas about whatever, gaming or whatever, then go ahead, do it, find it. Let's bring it out in the open. Let's talk about it. Addictions can cause mood problems such as depression and anxiety, both of which are confirmed as the leading side effects of dependency on not so much of the internet itself, but on social media applications. Spending more time on the internet lessens both the duration and quality of one's sleep, which increases mood imbalances and psychosomatic symptoms, including headaches and recurrent abdominal pain. Internet addictions appear to have a direct link to depression and suicidal ideation, exacerbated by the social isolation that other documented addictive behaviors often produce. Research has found a significant correlation between internet usage, depression, and low self-esteem among the participants presenting with internet addiction. Research of university students in Iran found more than 40% of the sample, or 408 students, had an internet addiction, higher than global estimates of 5 to 10% of total internet users worldwide. And this is in Iran. We keep talking about China. We keep talking about South Korea. We talked about Germany before. Now we're talking about Iran. What's going on in the United States? Males are far more likely to become internet dependent and argued that it is due to more experience in internet usage, less parental supervision, and higher use for entertainment purposes. This corroborates the long-standing psychological understanding that males are more visually oriented than females, who tend to be more sensory by comparison. But it may also reflect traditional gender roles with respect to computing technologies. Increased internet usage is related to an overall decrease in the quality of social interactions and increased loneliness, which contributes to depressed feelings and self esteem problems. Research from the university in Turkey found that almost three-fourths of the 3,442 participants began to use the internet before the age of 13. And this guy is from Turkey as well. Almost the same percentage reported using the internet for social relationships, while nearly half went online because of loneliness, and 2 out of 5 for entertainment. Research showed an almost perfect linear correlation between the young internet addiction and Beck depression inventory scores, with respondents whose parents both work and had chronic diseases at higher risk. Problems with social health, family, and time management also seems to stimulate internet addictive behaviors, like that. While an addiction may represent an attempt to manage or cope with internalized distress, such as depression and anxiety, the latter is also a reflection of deeper insecurities and beliefs of hopelessness and worthlessness and unworthiness. These feelings are rooted in a deep-seated subconscious effort to achieve the desired personality or social standing, or to relieve internal distress as a type of escape mechanism. One well-known condition developed by the need to escape from or survive life-threatening circumstances, such as severe childhood abuse and trauma, is dissociative identity disorder, or DID. In DID, identities and personalities are detached and compartmentalized to achieve a life-saving goal, primarily to protect the body and original core identity from pain and stress that they are not equipped to deal with, thereby enabling the person to function normally as if the trauma never happened. And this is from a movie. It's a really good movie, and I can't Split. That's the name of the movie. Okay, and that's I can't think of his name. Anyway, yeah, he had multiple personalities. Dissociative identity disorder. Those already predisposed to compartmentalize and fragment personalities are more likely to grab onto the possibilities of virtual anonymity and identity fabrication offered by the internet. They may believe themselves to be part of multiple systems, whether or not they are legitimately sharing a physical body with a distinct personality, with distinct personalities rather than suffering from psychotic or intense dissociative condition. And this is from the movie Black Swan. Behavior and presentation on the social media platforms often mimic a multiplication or dissociation of identities, albeit voluntary and deliberate. Such a demi-dissociation can be relatively harmless, but can also approach something akin to a cyber-dissociative identity disorder. And this is something brand new. We haven't really talked about cyber dissociative identity disorder, which leads to a chronic neglect of individuals' real life and identity and a persistent incoherence of multiple personalities. This is a guy that is referred to as Birdman. And I can't remember why. I can't remember his real name. But that's what he looked like when he first went into the NBA. And he slowly changed and got more tattoos. And there you go. That's when he retired. A study of 100, I'm not saying that he has dissociative identity disorder, but you can really see the change in this guy, even in his facial expression. He was kind of like Dennis Rodman. He was a fabulous rebounder. A study of 179 undergraduate students in Iran again, concluded that internet dependence presented significantly higher thrill and sensation seeking, disinhibition, and boredom susceptibility traits than the non dependents. Researchers also suspected that mental or virtual sensation might be a primary motivation of this type of internet addicted individual. Although the findings aptly describe one type of internet addict, other studies suggest an additional second type. The dependent personality type is likely to be more prone to anxiety and depression based on underlying beliefs of not being good enough and not having hope for the future and corresponding with low self-esteem and social awkwardness. People with this personality type are likely to be victimized online or engage in reactive cyberbully victim behaviors. It's really kind of interesting because I'm reading a book where the female lead in the book is has this very problem. She is she feels like that she's has beliefs that there's no hope for the future, and she has low self-esteem and social awkwardness, which turns out not to be true at all. It's just been identified by a person that's been trying to manipulate it. Psychopathic personality type is completely different. They are dependent on internet use purely for the satisfaction, sexual and psychological, of the experience. They seek out excitement and revel in creating problems for others, which they often pursue by creating false impressions and power differentials. They have to win, and they do so by denigrating others. They are easily bored and not disposed to anxiety or depression. Psychopathic personality. Higher levels of metacognition and emotional intelligence seem to counter or moderate the propensity for addictive behavior. It is specific dimensions and orientations of metacognition that predict addiction potential. The role of three parameters is of great importance, namely the need to control thoughts, uncontrollability, and positive beliefs about worry. There is typically an impairment in metacognition mastery among persons with addictions, which is characterized by difficulties in moderating mental states. Sub-average emotional intelligence is a predictor of internet addiction, while its development is also being hindered by the behavior. Being cut off from social interaction as a source of reinforcement and being deprived of alternative perspectives intensifies existing dysfunctional beliefs about the sources and use of power, control, and respect, and other problematic cognitive thoughts common in antisocial personalities. Now, this is a problem that we have seen recently, and the reason that we've seen all of these problems exacerbated is because of COVID. We were all isolated. They told us not to go out of our houses as much as possible. And there were a lot of people that spent their excess time either watching television or being on the internet. And because of that, all of these personality types have exploded. Because before, because they were out in public, because they couldn't nurture their problems on the internet, um, they were being masked. And because of COVID, all of these people are coming out. They spent too much time on the internet, and these problems were exacerbated because they were forced to live inside their houses and to be on the internet an excessive amount of times, excessive amount of time. So this is something we're going to see more in the future. So if you're thinking, hey, maybe we don't have that problem, maybe you didn't have that problem before COVID, but now that we've been through the pandemic and we're out the other side, now we're seeing these people coming out of the woodwork. Some of these people don't want to leave their houses. They don't want to take off their sweatpants. They don't want to wear real clothes. And this is going to be a problem in the future that we're going to be dealing with for the next couple of years, because there's a lot of companies that have decided not to do face-to-face. That people don't have to come in face-to-face. They can stay on the internet, including me. Maybe I have a problem. Luckily, I do go out in public from time to time. Not all that often, I guess. Not enough. Maybe that's me. Those with severe internet dependency also reported low social support, a lack of life purpose, and an unclear sense of direction. These traits are also hallmarks of psychopathic tendencies for which excessive internet use, including violent and pornographic entertainment, gaming and gambling, and cyberbullying, are suitable and reinforcing. While high excitability, low reward dependence, low self esteem, and poor family function predicted the emergence of internet dependence, low hostility and low interpersonal sensitivity were linked to remission. Lying, sensation seeking, irritation, and anger are characteristic traits of internet dependent users. Internet usage among adolescents could be a form of identity exploration rather than an impulse control disorder. Researchers have argued that young people might view and experience the internet as a place for ego development and shaping of self consciousness and self concept clarity, which implies that internet addicts might have a less than age average developed stable identity. There is need to differentiate between heavy internet users who may be utilizing the internet for age-related development purposes and addicted users who are more likely to exhibit fixed personality or psychological dysfunctions. In 2014 study among 719 Chinese adolescents in Hong Kong indicated a strong correlation between internet addiction and insomnia, with the latter significantly associated with depression. The study found that smartphones and other internet-enabled devices is actually reshaping the human brain among younger generations. So it's actually changing things, the smartphone. The brain restructuring includes a noted decrease in alpha wave activity, the electrical currents that facilitate deep sleep. Among internet-dependent teens managing numerous social media profiles simultaneously. This includes natural circadian patterns being interrupted as the body's internal alarm clock is being rewired to wake every few hours for the purpose of checking one's social media profiles. Now remember, we've talked about this before. We talked about the fact that, oh, that's another class, I'm sorry. I was talking about the fact that now that we're moving faster, our eustachian tubes, that which keeps us balanced, have changed because we're moving so rapidly. Theoretically, if we were 100 years ago and driving in cars going 30 and 40 miles an hour, and then all of a sudden you went 100 miles an hour, most of us would vomit. And the reason we would be because we wouldn't be used to it. Now, this is doing exactly the same thing. The internet is changing the way that we sleep. You still need 7 to 8 or 9 hours of sleep a night if you're a teenager. If you're a little older, you don't need that much. But if the internet is changing things so we only get 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night because we're afraid of missing out, FOMO, then possibly yes, our brain is being rewired. And what's going to happen on the other side? With diminished sleep quality over the long term being linked to increased psychological stress, depression, and digestion issues, in turn facilitating further mental health and self-esteem issues related to body image, diet, and lethargy, we see that social media dependency vis-a-vis internet addiction is linked to sleep disturbances that have both physiological and psychological effects on an enormously demonstrably detrimental nature on par with the effects of both alcohol and drug abuse. Okay, that's what we're seeing right now. But remember, we said the same thing about rock and roll, about hip hop, we said it about rap, we said it about just about everything, and it turned out not to be true. So it's possible that this change is is not bad. That the rewiring is not a bad thing. And we'll just have to think about that. We'll have to see what happens in the future, actually. Will it be rewired, and will things change for the better, or things change for the worse? Right now, we're predicting that we'll all get a motion sickness and throw up. But it may be that we adapt. This is part of our adaptation, our adaptability, our adaptation. For those with insomnia as a primary condition, excessive internet use mediated the pathway to depression, while for those with internet addiction as a primary condition, insomnia is an outcome linked to depression. The same applies to the social isolation that accompanies excessive internet use and is linked to feelings of loneliness, alienation, and incompetence and other depressive symptoms that can intensify over time and block the social skills development that is required to establish and maintain healthy relationships. Now, this is what I predict. What I'm predicting is that some people will suffer from internet addiction. Other people will not. And the reason the other people will not is because their brains won't allow them to destroy themselves. And this is a voluntary act. So what will happen is that we'll have some people that can't get off the internet, and we'll have other people that voluntarily get off so that their brains don't become rewired, because they will feel that it is a negative thing. I see adaptation. The human body is a human brain is extremely adaptive, and that's what I see happening in all of these cases. So we're going to still have all those addictions that we see in China and Hong Kong and Iran and Turkey and in Germany, but we're also going to see people getting off the internet. A study among 1,808 junior high school students in Taiwan associated lower levels of parental attachment with internet addiction, cyberbullying, smoking, alcohol use, and depression. So what we are seeing is these people already have problems. The people that already have problems are the ones that are the most likely to become addicted. Of the participants, 15.5% were classified as having internet addiction, with a higher proportion of males than in the non-addictive group, 61.4% versus 45.9%. In addition to spending more time on gaming and social network sites, the addicted group was also more exposed to online pornography and violence. Both cyberbully victimization and perpetration levels were significantly higher than their non-addicted peers, as well as online sexual solicitation, victimization, and perpetration. And of course, these are all hidden things. The violence and the pornography is all hidden because they're not going to do that when somebody else is around. They're only going to do the pornography and violence when they're alone. So if they are doing this excessively, then potentially you're going to have a problem. If they're only doing it when they're by themselves and afraid to show anybody else these interesting proclivities, then probably you're not going to have the same problem, same level of problems. In the Taiwanese research, wait a minute, there was a singer, Billie Eilish, admitted that she was addicted to pornography, and because of her addiction to pornography, she developed, it was violent pornography that she was watching, and she thought that's what sex was supposed to be. And she has come out and talked about this. So, and I can't remember where she talked about it. Anyway, Billie Eilish. And now she has declared that she is attracted to women more than men. So that's kind of interesting and might be part of a pattern. In the Taiwanese research, a significantly higher proportion of the internet-addicted group smoked and consumed alcohol, while they reported about twice the levels of low self-esteem and depression than their peers. Now, where did they get the low self-esteem and depression? Probably from the fact that they weren't interacting positively with their parents. But, that's okay. We can talk about that later. Internet addiction was positively correlated with maleness, poor academic performance, and lower internet literacy, and parental styles with lower attachment, safety, and restricted mediation. The satisfaction of relationships with their parents was less among those with internet addiction compared to others. Another social dynamic that relates to internet, so here we've added Taiwan. We're still not talking about the United States. Another social dynamic that relates to internet-related depression and suicidal ideation is the pressure, often self-imposed, of being instantly plugged in and continuously available and accessible via social media. Obviously, I don't have this problem because my phone is in the other room, and it has been all day. I've only looked at it twice. And I didn't look at it to see if I had any tweets, any messages, or any telephone calls. I looked at it to listen to a book on tape. In some sense, the adolescent, I'm okay because I'm 75 years old. I mean, this is never going to happen to me. You guys are the ones that are going to have to worry about this because you're the ones that are going to have to deal with it. I'm not going to have to deal with it. Well, I am. It's my grandson. Doesn't get off the internet. In some sense, the adolescent in particular invest emotionally in their connections and image online, which is an unrealistic yardstick for success, relevance, and self-worth, and is inherently predisposed to failure. Everyone from friends and enemies to those with commercial interests presents a perfect picture of success and attractiveness that is often only surface deep or otherwise part of a blatant lie and disingenuous narrative being cultivated, edited, and carefully curated in social media spaces to present a certain life brand. And this is something that you have to remember. Everybody you see on the internet, you're not seeing 24 hours a day, you're seeing 3 minutes a day. And they can present any image to you that they want. Attractive, they can be happy, whereas most of the time they're not. Such presentations are taken seriously while one's own perceived shortcomings, either real or perceived, are intensified in their hurtfulness based on irrational comparisons to others. A detailed 2013 study in the UK, where more than 30,000 14 and 15-year-old teens were questioned, found that 37% of the girls experienced one or more symptoms of diminished mental health. This is more than twice the rate compared to their male peers, and what is even more alarming is that the prevalence of emotional distress is worsening, up from a reported 34% in 2005. Well, it's not that much different. An interesting trend that was highlighted by the UK study is that high-risk behavior among teenagers is at an all-time low, with drinking, drug use, unprotected sex, pregnancy, and truancy all reducing considerably in the context of growing depression and anxiety. Social media can easily become a tool of comparison with others, one that is guaranteed to leave all but the most self-assured and resilient child feeling that he or she is falling short of expectations. Or do they get their expectations from the internet, from influencers? Social media postings almost seem set up to increase a person's feelings of inadequacy as they navigate a world filled with lies, inaccuracies, personal agendas, and institutional exploitation. It is likely that technology can act as a tipping point by intensifying insecurities and feelings of being overwhelmed. Half the UK respondents reported social media had changed their lives. The concept of upward comparison refers to those instances when a person compares themselves with an individual or group he or she perceives to be in a superior position in any valued aspect. However, while upward comparisons may provide inspiration to improve, they can also lower self-esteem and generate feelings of inadequacy, especially when the target area keeps moving. It's a moving target. With social media content edging to the extreme opposites of happiness and adversity, the middle ground is apparently considered boring. Many users assume a relatively fixed spot, largely through selective and benign postings. Shares and follower or friend requests. This means that many people only or primarily post content that aligns with their chosen personal brand and response that they want to elicit. For those connected to them, this tendency can create a skewed perception of success and accomplishment, as failures and disappointments are not shared. This is a sort of confirmation bias, or the tendency to search for, interpret, focus on, and remember information that confirms a preconception. Watch this. Whoa, his room is clean. Watch, it's a miracle. Whoa. Context collapse describes a set of circumstances where a social media user realizes that talking to everyone is the same as talking to no one. There is an infinite audience possible on social media. However, in contrast to the limited groups that a person usually interacts with face to face, it becomes impossible to adjust the tone, presentation, and content of the message to fit into the social context. They can't talk to everyone. And this is kind of interesting because these are all the different Batmobiles that have been used. It is likely that context collapse is followed by a reconstruction of the self that is more suitable to a new conceptualization of the generalized others with who the individual desires to connect. Professional users report that in order to build and satisfy an audience, a balance between personal authenticity and audience expectation must be achieved, which requires personal revelations and identity presentations. Information from everywhere is instantly available to everyone. This fishbowl effect magnifies fear and shame in social media spaces to a point where they become all-consuming. Impossible models of perfection and malicious attention-seeking strategies increase internal stress to the point that complete and often extreme disengagement, both online and offline alike, is the only solution. And of course, that's the problem with celebrities. They have to stay on all the time. There's The Rock back there. That is, what is her name? They gave them Twizzlers. And she's getting into hers, and everybody got to see her open her Twizzlers. The constant awareness of one's actions, that someone is always watching, increases paranoia, anxiety, and depression. When the impact of a message is different from its intent by being misconstrued or taken out of context, often deliberately, a harrowing experience can quickly develop where wrong response choices can lead to serious consequences. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be taken out of context and put on Twitter, and then it'll be a whole thing. Self-censoring becomes an instinctive norm to try and navigate possible dangers ahead. Excuse me, I had to drink some of my cider. This is from last harvest. People are dismissed or chastised for changing their opinions, disagreeing with someone, however amenable, and doing something that is not deemed cool enough. The Hawthorne effect, similar to the fishbowl effect, occurs when individuals change an aspect of their behavior when they are aware of or believe that they are being watched, a familiar sensation when engaging on the internet. Today, individuals and groups are able to cleverly manipulate digital information and interactions to stir conflict by pitting people against each other to achieve an objective, political, commercial, or otherwise. It is a tactic used by governments, corporations, terrorists, activists, trolls, and others for their own agenda and satisfaction. And we're seeing this right now with the war in Gaza. Of course, Gaza, Hamas attacked Israel first. They killed a couple thousand people, and now the Israeli Defense Force is striking back, and because of some of the information that's coming onto the internet, people are getting the wrong idea of what's going on. and people are up in arms about the fact that Gaza is being attacked. It's interesting. It's interesting because we're getting bad information, and a lot of people are getting really bad information. As the need to belong is the most fundamental human motivation, and actually there was at Dene College they were going to talk about how the Palestinians are similar to the Navajo, and they canceled that one. They canceled that talk. I was really shocked when I saw that somebody was going to compare the Palestinians to the Navajo, the Dene people. I found that really odd uh, in, in, in support of the Hamas, this terrorist group. Really strange. But they canceled it. So, and there's probably a reason, and I'm not aware of it. As the need to belong is the most fundamental human motivation, most people find it hard not to choose sides in an ever increasing polarity of opinions and beliefs. And this is one of those situations, Hamas versus Israel. We're also getting an interesting backlash against supporting the Ukraine against Russia. There are some people that believe that we should just allow the Russians to overrun the Ukrainians. Really kind of interesting. Lies and biases are expediently used to gain support in the short term, while long term and individual consequences are ignored. Social media plays a role in encouraging social polarization. There is already ample evidence to suggest this is a widespread phenomenon, yet one still largely unnoticed, as social media and news sites enable content based on users' preferences and online behavior. So if you don't like Jewish people and you're against Israel, then you would go to websites that supported Hamas and Gaza, and vice versa. The concept of post-truth world is also employed where information is framed and debate is stimulated by appeals to the emotions of an audience rather than being connected to facts. This leads to stratified audiences where one group follows an entirely different stream of information and news than others. Such polarization then becomes adjunct to other forms of conflict as it demonizes enemies, lionizes the characteristics, or whitewashes the flaws and mistakes of one's own group. With all groups self-righteous and disconnected, a recipe for disaster is in the making. Eventually, most people on all sides are left disenchanted and alienated, which, when in the context of adverse circumstances and a lack of material support, increases the risk of mental health problems, especially those that are predisposed to such conditions that tend to increase the burden on themselves and others. Many individual and unaffiliated perpetrators of mass murder, such as school shooters and lone wolf terrorists, suffer from some kind of mental condition other than a personality disorder, in addition to feeling aggrieved and socially isolated. The most common problems are disorders such as paranoid schizophrenia and depression among this group that almost entirely consists of adolescents or young adult males. Many have also experienced a history of traumatization. And this is the shooter from Virginia Tech. Those are the Columbine shooters. This is the guy that shot up Santa Cruz. This is the guy that shot up the elementary school in Connecticut. I can't think of anybody else. I can't recognize anybody else right off the top of my head. Oh, here you go. On May 23rd, 2014, 22-year-old Elliot Rodger killed 6 people and injured 14 others in Isla Vista near the campus of University of California, Santa Barbara, before shooting himself to death. Roger had a history of mental illness and was treated for schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. He frequently posted rantings about his despair and rejection by women on social media, including a stack of selfies and dozens of YouTube videos complaining about the world's unfairness and his desire for revenge for his life of involuntary celibacy. Elliot Rodger. A socially awkward loner named Alec Manassian, claiming allegiance to secret online society of incels adherents, that's involuntary celibates, pledged allegiance to Elliot Rodger on Facebook as the incel group's founder and martyr. He then used a rented cargo van to plow through pedestrians among Toronto's famed Yonge Street on the city's warmest day of the year to date, his intentionally targeting female pedestrians in particular. In the end, he killed 10 people and injured another 13 because he was an incel, an involuntary celibate. Christopher Harper Mercer, who killed 9 people at the Umpqua Community College near Roseburg, Oregon, on October 1st, 2015, had previously praised Vester Lee Flanagan online in social media posts that apparently went unrecognized for what they were. Flanagan had himself murdered 2 former colleagues from a Roanoke, Virginia television station during a live broadcast on August 26th, 2015. On his part, in a 23-page manifesto faxed to ABC News, Flanagan had referenced Dylan Roof, a young white man accused of murdering 9 people at an African-American church in Charleston, South Carolina on June 17, 2015. And he has since been indicted and has been found guilty of killing those people. So he wasn't only accused of murder, he was found guilty of murder. Apparently, Flanagan was enraged at Roof and was motivated to incite a race war. These young men were angry and depressed, used social media not only to vent, but also to look for and connect with others with the same inspiration and needs. As such, a combination of depression, psychosocial adversity, and lack of social assets is instrumental in the vulnerability to violent radicalization. A process known as cyber-balkanization is similarly thought to be instrumental to the division and alienation of individuals and groups on social media and elsewhere online. Balkanization has to do with the Balkans. The Balkans are in Eastern Europe. These are countries like Romania, Albania, Bulgaria, what used to be Yugoslavia, now it's Serbia and Croatia. These are the Balkan states, and the reason we talk about balkanization is because at the beginning of the 20th century, there were all kinds of revolutions and civil wars going on in the Balkans, and because and of course it's a assassination of the crown prince of the Austro-Hungarian Empire that started World War I. And he was assassinated in Serbia, one of the Balkan states. And of course, the Serbian Macedonia is part of this mess. Greece is not really part of the Balkans, but it gets involved in the Balkans from time to time. Anyway, at the beginning of the 20th century, there was all kinds of upheaval going on. Bulgarians were fighting the Romanians were fighting the Albanians were fighting the Croatians and Serbians. It was a mess. It was a real mess, and that's what balkanization is all about. The fact that one civil war creates a new civil war that leaks into another country, and now we have everybody fighting. That's balkanization. So cyber balkanization is where everybody's fighting. Also referred to as the splinternet, internet audiences are splintering and dividing due to different factors such as politics, nationalism, religion, technological and financial abilities, and other spatial interests delineated along the lines of difference rather than likeness. what is frequently referred to in public forums and mass media as identity politics. And of course, this is what we're seeing in Israel and Gaza, with Hamas. This is what we're seeing with Ukraine and Russia. We have one political party that seems to be backing Russia, and the other party that is backing backing Ukraine. As weird as that may seem, we also have politics getting involved. I'm sorry, religion getting involved. In that that's how ISIS became so strong. They were getting recruits from even the United States, Canada, and Europe were coming into the territory that ISIS controlled, and they were joining their military. The internet disrupts people's ties with their neighbors, coworkers, and personal friends by atomizing societies into online communities that are more dispersed and faceless. While the internet and online communication can also be the source of a new, equally satisfying and constructive social capital, atomization can lead to loneliness and isolation, and sometimes outgroup antagonism that is linked to depression. And this is one of the areas that white supremacy seems to be attaching itself to support things like the insurrection on January 6th. Proud Boys, Three Percenters, the Boogaloo Boys, all of these groups seem to have coalesced, and they were willing to attack the Capitol, and some of them have been put in jail. The idea is that a person projects his or her pre-existing vulnerabilities online, resulting in a similar feedback of multifold proportions. This happens because people instinctively act according to their subconscious fears, which can be in a passive or active, engaging or avoiding, or defensive or aggressive manner. Passive-aggressive behavior. While appearing completely non-judgmental and unattached, content on the internet is also generated by individuals with an agenda and objectives that are sometimes elusive or misguided. Reminiscent of the Roman orator and statesman Marcus Tullius Cicero, who in his speech to the Roman consul asked, "Cui bono?" The same should be asked today of media content. To whose benefit? Who's the one that gets something out of this? Is an old adage to explore a hidden motive or to suggest that information is not as it appears. In an online environment where truth has been largely displaced by believability, objectivity is an ever more scarce commodity. Those in ruthless pursuit of ill-gotten gains routinely try to exploit consumers who are more gullible, susceptible, or trustful. They utilize the features of the new technologies, such as filter bubbles, to make themselves and their cause seem credible and believable without regard for potential consequences or the lives of their audience. Filter bubbles refer to the discrete result of a personalized search in which the algorithm of the search engine or social media website predicts the information that a user wants to see based on his or her characteristics and extant online behavior, which has of course been tracked since the day that same user activated an account on a given platform or allowed a given app access to their data. And this happens to me, evidently I like women because I keep getting buxom women on my feeds. They keep advertising using this. A lot of times one thing doesn't have anything to do with the other. What's going on? In a sense, the internet becomes less of a connection to the world and more of a manipulated flow of data that can become divergent from an accurate, bigger picture. Ultimately, the effect is that people are removed, even shielded in a sense, from news, views, and opinions that they might not like or care for. What was I looking for the other day? I was looking for a handheld chainsaw, just a small one so that you could cut small things. And by golly, I'm just getting buried in advertisements dealing with handsaws. This is the best one. This is the best one. It is not difficult to understand how these filter bubbles can isolate a given internet user from different perspectives, thereby increasing polarization and eliminating the middle ground in the space for compromise. Instead of constructive debate, conflict, polarization, and even radicalization ensues with a given digital space, enabling exercises in blaming and scapegoating, and with the cultivation of intense emotions and grievances, which in the context of real-world personal adversities can easily become unmanageable. And the reason I have 8chan and Stormfront here is because seems to be leading the white supremacy movement, especially Stormfront. And 8chan has all kinds of horrible things on it. In response to this factionalism, social media administrators and moderators, often required to espouse the political and ideological leanings of their parent companies, strive to minimize publicly viewable conflict by suppressing dissenting, typically center to right of center views, by circuitously muzzling prominent agitators, pundits, and any user not engaging in overtly illegal hate speech. There was what happened? What was that guy? Dylan somebody. He's a transsexual or transgender. I don't know if he's transgender yet. Anyway, Bud Light printed a can. They only printed it for him, but they showed it on the internet, and people just went berserk. People boycotted Bud Light just because they supported this concept of changing your gender. And they lost billions of dollars in sales because it all hit the internet. And Kid Rock, that brilliant fellow, decided he was going to take his AK-47 and shoot a case of Bud Light on video. He made a video of it. Shadow banning, euphemized as an abuse filter by Twitter, Instagram, and other social media platforms, is a furtive method used to filter objectionable content automatically. As a result, content that is deemed abusive, hateful, or offensive is hidden from users' timelines, which limits its reach without deleting or suspending the contributor's account. The contributor in question also typically remains unaware that they have been exiled and their content has been filtered, given that his or her own timeline indicates nothing has changed and that it is business as usual. But they've been banned. Sorry, needed another drink of cider. It appears that free speech and healthy debate are the victims of deliberate censorship designed to silence the voices of dissent. It is curiously ironic that the loss of personal identity and the rise of identity politics are simultaneously contoured around specific social media platforms, some more than others. A good example of this is the fact that after 9/11, that's not right. After January 6th, they kicked Trump, who was president at the time, they kicked him off of Twitter. And he decided he was going to make his own social media site. I can't remember what it's called. Network of Truth or something. Truth Social, that's what it is. This is research by Federer, The Hidden Psychology of Social Networks. A meme, usually when we say meme, we mean a particularly popular piece of content with qualities of being highly shareable or having repeated itself in various ways across time, and having particular rawness or lack of polish in the format of content itself. This is a meme. A meme is a unit of cultural transmission. Things like ideas, songs, fashion, and language are all examples of memes, or more specifically, groups of memes. What the heck is a meme, and why am I one of them? When social media gives us this new window into the lives of our neighbors, and those neighbors exclusively post their life highlights, it is easy for us to conclude that we're less successful, less attractive, less happy, and so on. Ironically, being constantly exposed to these highlights has demonstrably negative effects on our mental health. And then I said, I completely understand your frustration. Get it? Depression in young people has risen as much as 70% in the past 25 years, according to a recent study in the UK. And we looked at that study before. And some researchers point to a social media as the cause. The same study showed that 63% of Instagram's users reported feeling miserable after using the platform, higher than any other social media site. The actual content of a social feed is only a small part of the equation. What's more important is the mindset of the people browsing the feed and their relationship to the memes with which they are interacting. And this is one of the things that we need to remember, is the fact that just because uh, some people already have a problem, just like we saw with the research in Taiwan. They've already got a problem. So all this is doing is exacerbating that problem. So what do you do? Do you close it down for everybody, or do you? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. Different social media network structures satisfy different social and psychological needs. Ego networks allow people to solidify connections to their tribes and define themselves to the group of people who know their offline selves. Superego networks allow people to express the selves they one day hope to be, the selves they most want to represent to the world, and to peer into the ideal selves of others. Id networks are those in which users are disconnected from their offline selves and are organized around their interests and passions rather than by their offline connections. ID networks are where they id networks are where they are free to express themselves, explore new ideas, interests they're not quite ready to wear in the offline world, and discover communities filled with people of similar interests. And Tumblr and Reddit are two of those. The differences between social network spaces are psychological. They're not often separate populations of people. Most people on 4chan probably have Facebook accounts. 4chan is one of those extremist groups or extremist organizations or networks. They just act very differently on 4chan. On Facebook, they're one person. On 4chan, they act differently. And networks, people are looking for content that is funny, compelling, entertaining, or otherwise interesting to them, not their proper social selves. They discuss taboo topics without worrying what friends and relatives might think. They are in a state of epistemic curiosity, a pleasurable state of curiosity with anticipation of reward. Twitch is a Chinese network. Participation in ego networks like Facebook and Snapchat bind people to their real life selves than when they are in superego and id networks, because the only people with whom they are connected are the people who know their offline selves. The things done in ego networks have a greater sense of realism attached to them, not just because people are connected to offline friends, but because their identity is also strongly reinforced. A real name accompanies every post made, every article liked, and every comment expressed. And that is the end of that chapter. That week. So next week is spring break. I'll talk to you after we come back.